or affiliates.
Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. You're listening live to Heart-2-Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist with a full-time private practice in beautiful Encino, California. And I'm here along with my best friend, colleague, and business partner, Dr. Robert Jaffe, who's also a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified hypnotherapist. And I'll leave the rest of it to him to introduce himself.
Thank you. Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
So welcome everyone. We're going to be talking today again about addictions, codependency, relationships, and trauma. And those are very, very interesting subjects. There's a lot been written about it. There's a lot to learn about it. I've been studying it for probably about 40 years, and there's still a lot that I'm learning and don't know. But we do have some ideas that can benefit you in terms of understanding what codependency is and where it comes from, to help you identify whether you are in a codependent reality, as we call it. And the reason we talk about codependency is we have learned that codependency is the most frequent and common of all the addictions. And the way that what we're identifying, that we're defining addictions, is that an addiction is a behavior that we do over and over and over again in order to feel better, to get some good feeling from it, and that serves the purpose of releasing us from any stress that we're feeling, any unhappiness that we're feeling. It's basically just an idea is we want to feel good. And so when we use the addiction helps us to feel good. The addiction can be cigarette smoking. It can be smoking methamphetamines. It can be injecting methamphetamines or injecting heroin. It can be smoking marijuana. It can be consumption of alcohol. Those are all chemical addictions. And then there's process addictions where our brain creates similar chemicals. And those chemicals give us a feeling of euphoria, and they give us a sense of well-being that we don't normally have. So, and since we don't normally have it, then we want to use that substance over and over again, or we want to engage in that behavior over and over again to get us that sense of high and that sense of relief from the heaviness that we feel, or the anxiety that we feel, or the stress that we feel. And that's what codependency does. Codependency is a process addiction. You're not ingesting anything, but you are engaging in a process with another person where you make that person, to use a Narcotics Anonymous or an Alcoholics Anonymous analogy, you make the other person your higher power. Meaning that you believe that you need this other person to feel happy with you so that you can feel happy yourself.
Exactly. And then many times we mistaken that with love.
Yes. Right? Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so love, we're covering a lot today, which we did in our previous program, in terms of what I work with today with my clients, because one of my clients today asked me, how do you define love?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a book here, as a matter of fact, yeah, which is talking about the 40 rules of love. And of course, this is a translation of these famous, Persian philosopher Shams Tabrizi, who actually was the teacher of Rumi,
Oh,
right? Okay, so
okay.
then I'm really, interested to read this book. That's why I bought it, because I want to see what are the 40 rules of love.
It's
And
it's
then
it's
so we
it's an
can define it
it's
in
an
one
awful lot
sentence.
of rules. It's an awful lot of rules, and I think when you have that many rules, by the time you get to the 40th, you've forgotten the first. What was the first one again? So, oh yeah, now what was the 29th? What was the 37th? Yeah, interesting. The 40 rules of love.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't
So,
know what they are yet. So I haven't read them, so we
oh,
don't
well,
know how they
I'm sure they're all great rules,
Yeah.
um, or he wouldn't have written a book about them, right?
Exactly. And translated in so many languages as well, right?
Uh-huh. Well, if you like the book, let me know, and then I
Yeah.
will borrow it. And
Okay.
yeah.
Sure.
So, but going back to the person who was asking me what is love, and my answer was that that love is our natural state of being, and love is a part of us that we all are at the deepest level. And so I talk about human beings as having two parts to us, one being the human and the other the being. And the human part of us is the part that is our personality, and the human part of us is the part that is our body, and the human part of us is that part of us which thinks and even feels. And we feel different feelings. Some of the feelings are positive, some of the feelings are negative. So that's the human part of us. And then I say the being part of us is the part of us that existed before we became human beings. That is energy. And Einstein proved that energy is neither created nor destroyed, which means that that anything that looks solid is actually solidified energy. And we now know this because we've developed the electron microscope and the particle accelerator, which can look into the nucleus of an atom. And when you look at the nucleus of an atom, what you see is subatomic particles that are blinking in and out of existence millions of times per second. Where do they go when they are out of existence? We don't know, but we know that they're not there for a millisecond, and then they come back. So what we know then is that the world is a big light show that appears solid to us, but actually is a light show, sort of like a film where if you stop a film and you see one piece of the film, you see a picture that looks like it's not moving. But then if you put more film and you run it quickly, it looks like the film like there's the moving picture. It's a moving
Right.
picture.
Right.
That's basically what we are in these forms. I know I'm getting pretty philosophical, but there's a reason. The reason is because we are energy, and we communicate through what we are. So when we use words, the words are just sounds that we make with our larynx and with our mouth and with our tongue, and those sounds come through our belief, are filtered through our belief systems and the energy that we're carrying. So, for example, I can tell, and I'm sure a lot of people can tell, if I call up my daughter and she says, "Hi, Dad," in the "Hi, Dad," I can tell where she's at.
Exactly.
I can tell
Yeah.
her mood. I can
Right.
tell if something's bothering her.
Right.
I can tell if she's relaxed. I can tell if she's happy. I can tell a lot from "Hi, Dad."
Right.
Right? And that's because I'm familiar with her and I'm familiar with her energy, and her energy through her vocal transmission is coming to me, and my energy is interpreting it. And so communication is really one energy system communicating something to another energy system.
That's absolutely true.
So
We were talking about love.
we'll talk about, thank you. So we're going back to love. So love being the essence of who we are. And we know that because everything in the world, starting at the beginning of recorded time, is people talking, writing, and creating music around the topic of love, right? How many love poems have there been written? How many books have been written about love affairs? How many movies have been made? How many songs have been created? How many piano pieces or guitar pieces are about love? Can't count them. There's so many, right?
So then 40 rules of love is not that bad.
40 rules of love isn't actually that. It's not. Again, I don't know. You're gonna have to memorize them. And okay, neural number. but but we know that love is where it's at because it's so ingrained in us to seek it and to want it, and that's why we connect with another person and we decide to stay with that person so that we can experience that wonderful feeling. And of course, if that person's energy and our energy combine, it creates a synergy that is actually bigger than the both of us.
Right.
And that synergy we can call love. If it's coming from a place of wanting the best for each other.
Right. I actually, well, I got an article that, I shared that with you the other day, I think, that I'm not sure where I put it. So actually there it is, that, describes love, in so many ways. So, I mean, when you look at these graphs about, how love is created, right? They all make sense in some ways, to say the least, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but then again, while they are good models, I don't know if they are applicable to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Right.
Right.
For example, one of them says that, first it is love, and then there are a few steps until death do us part,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then within that, there are sex, marriage, starting a family, happily ever after, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with love, and then that's what usually people follow. And then we have actually the model reverses itself, and it says that no, love is the last part, and then people need to start with sexuality, physical attraction, empathy, compassionate, comparability, shared vision, respect, and then love. And then there are people that they say love happens when two people feel equal next to each other, right?
Yes.
And then, so I'm not sure, I'm not sure that how the love, can be described, because two people who come together, each one of them has their own, experiences of love. Each one of them have their own interpersonal skills, their way of thinking, and all of that. So I think one of the main aspects of love to me is not so much of what is known as equality per se, but it is more of a comparability first before equality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I make sense or not.
Well, I understand you're saying it's a compatibility, and so then you have to say, okay, so if it's a compatibility, then each person has their own hierarchy of what's important to them.
Right.
Right. So let's say if intellect is very important to me, then I would want a compatible partner who is at my intellectual level.
But then again, that also called equality.
Well, yeah, there's
Right.
different words
Right.
to mean the same
So
thing.
yeah, so to me, comparability means that you bring something to the table, I bring something to the table, that these two work together. So there is
Mm-hmm.
not one above the other one, but it is what we bring to the table with for each other that brings us close together, feeling safe and intimate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is no one up, one down position, but it becomes comparable. It becomes a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
Together. Like you have seen some devices, the way they connect to each other, they have different components, but once those components kind of merge together, they have a perfect fit, right? So that's comparability.
And
right?
I think that's an excellent definition.
Right.
And I also think that love is also one of those ethereal qualities that there is no definition
There
for.
is no definition. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
There is no one definition for it, because, like I said, everybody as unique as each of one of us, we are as unique as we are. Therefore, the experience of love, it becomes a personal experience.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is no one definition for it realistically.
Right.
So
one of the things for me that I look at in terms of loving is do I want happiness for this person, even if it involves me not being involved with this person.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of selfless love, where you just want the best for the person and you want to be with that person, but if you're not with that person, you still care and want the best for that person. And that oftentimes doesn't happen in relationships.
I totally agree with you. Relationship is more about you make me complete versus, versus what you just described.
Yes. Yes.
So it's about me kind of a thing usually.
Right.
That as we hear it. We hear it in the songs, we hear it in literature, we see it in writing. What you bring to me that makes me feel complete. You're my other half, you're my better half.
So now we're back to codependency.
Back to codependency.
Right,
and I think we are at our commercial break, even though we haven't heard it, but I think we are getting close to that. So while we are, we're going to continue until we hear the commercial.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. We just got
noticed. Okay.
I think, see, if love is about, you're my better half, and then you're my half, or I want you to feel complete, then that's codependency. That's not love.
Correct.
Right.
So we're going to talk a lot more about that as soon as we take our little break here.
Right.
Please stay with us.
Yes. See you in the back.
Check us out online at KMET1490am.com.
Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Heart-to-Heart program at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio. Dr. Robert and Dr. Mitra here. And we are discussing about codependency, addictions, trauma, and relationships. So we would like to hear from you and your experience in this area. Please call us live at 951-922-3532. And also, please introduce this program to those that you believe they can benefit from. And you may visit us at our YouTube at heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. So Dr. Robert Jaffe, we were talking about love and then how love can be mistaken with codependency. You're my better half, your better half, or my other half, is actually a codependent phrase rather than a healthy love.
Yeah, so how is it that a man and a woman can get married, walk down the aisle together, profess their love, and a year, 2 years, 7 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years later, not be able to talk a civil sentence to each other, and break up and hate each other? How does that happen? And it brings up the question of, was there really love to begin with? Because I said that to me, loving means that you want the best for the other person, even if you're not in the other person's life.
Yeah.
That you hold out a hope that the other person is going to have a happy life, and that you do whatever you can to help them have a happy life. Of course, that doesn't mean that you sacrifice yourself needlessly. If you see that they're unhappy and they're not making their own effort, you may have to break up the relationship, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to dislike them or even hate them.
So, when I heard this phrase, a long time ago, and I'm not sure where I read this and how, but it did stay with me, and that was a long time ago. That, the phrase talks about, it goes like this: I love you so much that I will let you go, that I will let go of you. Let you go and let go of you, because I know that's my love doesn't make you happy. right?
Yeah.
Uh, and by far, I think that's the most selfless love, like you're experiencing
Mm-hmm.
that I want the best for you, and that's how much I love you. And then that best that I want for you, it's not me,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that's a profound state of love. The reason that the movie The Notebook was so popular, especially with women, um, men liked it too, but women really got into it, is because there was a romantic love of self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And what the man did was he spent a lot of time reminding his wife, who was suffering from Alzheimer's, I think, and she couldn't remember who she was or couldn't remember him. He would sit and tell her stories that would remind her, and for a few seconds she would remember. And those few seconds were so precious to him that he decided he would spend his life doing that. And it was so selfless. And I think that because, and I explained, and I explained earlier that I think of the human being as the human part, which is the ego. The ego's mantra is what's in it for me, and we're all in it just for ourselves. We may care about other people, but only to a point. But ultimately, we have to take care of ourselves. And the spirit's mantra is, "How may I serve?"
Right.
The spirit's mantra is, I want to experience lovingness. I want to experience gratitude. I want to experience kindness. I want to experience appreciation. And those are my highest values. The ego always wants to be right. The spirit doesn't care about that. The spirit says, I'm willing to let you believe that you're right, um, as long as we have a shared lovingness with each other. I don't have to prove that I'm right. Even if it turns out that I am, so what? It's not about right or wrong. And you and I have that. We say, "Oh, you were wrong here." "Oh, okay." Right? "Oh, I was wrong." "Oh, okay." Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we say that to each other, but we don't hold that against each other.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
it's it, it,
Yeah.
it's like, being right is not the most important thing.
Right.
It's being connected and
It's
being
being
caring.
connected, being caring. Exactly. I mean, you and I both know that from personal and professional experiences, we can't always be accurate, we can't always be right, we can't always be at the right place, we can't always be saying the right thing, or so we have our own moments, and we have our own flaws, and we have our own shortcomings, and we have both, what works and what doesn't work. But that's why we are human, right? So we do that, but we have never held any of that against each other. We have never said, remember you said this to me the last year, and so I
Right.
still carry that negativity with me or
Mhm.
with you, and then wait for that right moment to attack each other with it.
Yes, yes, to use it against the other person,
Exactly.
the other person's imperfections.
Right.
So we all
That's the
have.
ego.
Well, that's the
That-
well, the
yeah.
yeah, that's the ego part of us. Now, that being said, we all have an ego.
Right.
Just being in a body means that our bodies can be harmed and our bodies can be killed. We have a very, very powerful instinct for survival, and that's our ego's job, is to make sure that we survive. So the ego gets a jolt out of being right, because the ego believes that if I'm right, then I get to live another day. I get to fight another day. And so, in the past, and even today in some areas of the world, physical survival was not assured on a day-to-day basis. Here in the United States, for many people, it is. It's not like we're worried. Some of us are, but a lot of people aren't worried on a day-to-day basis that they're not going to have shelter, or they're not going to have clothing, or they're not going to have food. But the ego is still there, And so what the ego does then is it expands its reach from being from having physical power to having emotional power. So it argues with people as though if I can prove to you that I'm right, then I win, and I get and the winning gives me an adrenaline rush, and it makes me feel powerful and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And when people and so the ego, although it's part of each of us, and we all still have it, and we all still do get an adrenaline rush when we're right. Some of us have learned that that isn't the most important thing. And so when going back to codependency is an is a lack of maturation where we believe that we're not complete on our own.
Yes.
That's a childhood state. The child is dependent. The child cannot go out and make a living. The child cannot decide whether or not to wear a jacket because it's cold.
Right.
The child doesn't have that awareness, so the parent does it for them. As the child gets older, and if the parent is parenting them by teaching them and inculcating within them values that are positive for them, then and the parent then starts to back off as the child is able to do more for him or herself, then the child starts to feel good about their ability to take care of themselves. If, on the other hand, the parent is overly controlling, then the child believes that they need someone else to tell them what to do. Or if the parent is not connected enough with the child and gives the child too much freedom too soon, the child doesn't feel safe because the child doesn't know how to take care of themselves and has to figure it out on their own. And that creates emotional blockage as they get older.
Right, right. And then that's the emotional blockage that, the sort of, or, plays out how the child has built up the process of codependency. It may, it manifests itself right then.
Right. So David Viscott was a talk show psychiatrist, wrote a number of books, very, very bright guy, died pretty early actually, but he had a talk show in the 90s, and he said something that stuck with me all these years. And he said that emotional health is really nothing more than the ability to say ouch in the now moment.
In the now moment.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
It means that when your feelings get hurt, that you don't pretend that they weren't hurt, and you don't get defensive and try and hurt the other person back, and you don't get competitive with them. You simply say that hurt. And if you can say that hurt in that moment, then you get the hurt out. If you don't get the hurt out in a very short period of time, approximately 2 to 5 seconds, the hurt becomes anger. And then if you don't get the anger out in another short period of time, it can morph into guilt. Guilt is anger that you had that you now turned against yourself because you couldn't express it to the person that you were angry with.
Yes, so guilt means, I did something wrong.
I did something wrong and I deserve to be punished.
Yeah, and
right?
that's the shame, I am wrong.
And of course, the shame is not that I've done something wrong, it's that I am wrong.
Right.
There's something wrong with me.
I am wrong because I did something wrong.
No, I am wrong because I'm defective.
I'm
defective. The shame is not really about what we've done. It's I'm defective.
Right.
If my nose were just a little rounder, I'd be okay. If I was just 6'1" instead of 5'9", then women would love me.
Yeah, if I was 120 instead of 125, then
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we do then is, as we're growing up, we need to have our feelings reflected back to us without any judgment attached. So we need to say to our children, "Oh, you're upset with your sister because she just took your toy, and you're angry with her, and you want to get your toy back. Now, can you use your words and say, I don't like it when you take my toy. I want my toy back. And so, so what the parent is doing is they're coaching the child on how to deal with it when the child was just going over and pulling the sister's hair, right? The sister was enacting her anger rather than using her words. And of course, and so codependence is an enactment of a dependent stage of life that we haven't grown through.
Exactly.
So we still feel as though we need the other person's approval in order for us to be okay.
And the need to have the approval is actually something that I see it happen among parents and children relationship a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do have clients who are suffering from the need for approval, and the need to feel approved. It's such a profound dynamic in their lives,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
it becomes actually a self-destructive process. It can become a self-sabotaging process.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So they need to be approved. I want my husband to definitely say something about what I did. I want my husband or my partner to say something about, see, I have established this business, and I need to be to be complimented on that. I need to be told about that. I need to be worshipped about that. Or I feel that somebody every day has to tell me, oh, what a good job you did. Oh, so amazing you did. And if I don't get that, then I don't feel complete. Then I feel like I'm lacking something.
Right. Right. Exactly. So
I'm basically, it becomes like something that you and I said, I am what people think of me.
Yeah. So the ego believes that I am what I have.
Yeah.
So the more I accumulate in terms of money, in terms of possessions, in terms of real estate, in terms of jewelry, that makes me more valuable.
Right.
I am more valuable, which means that if I lose my money or I lose a piece of jewelry, I'm less valuable. We saw that happen in the stock crash of 1929,
Right.
when people when their stocks, they were millionaires, and then they had no money, they jumped out of a window, right? Because they were who they were, what they had, and now all of a sudden they had nothing, and that means that that they were worthless, and then they took their own lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So we see the extent of codependency is not just between the partner.
Right. Yeah.
We see the extent of that, among, many forms of relationships, even working relationships. We see that, between friends. We see that people interacting within the society with each other at different levels. So codependency is not just related and limited to romantic, partners. But we do see one of the main complaints we see in therapy is called codependency, and couples don't even realize that they are codependent, and many of them have not even heard about the term before.
Correct. So it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about denial. Right. And so denial is probably the most ubiquitous state of that is problematic in human society. And denial simply means that I don't really see it as a problem, whatever it is. And so the fact that I need my partner's approval, I don't really see it as a problem.
Yes.
We'll talk more about it when we come back from our commercial break, and please stay with us.
Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Heart-to-Heart program at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio. Dr. Robert and Dr. Mitra here talking about codependency, its difference with love, actually, and then how it impacts our lives and how it develops, right?
Absolutely. So I was talking before the break about denial.
Right.
Okay, and we keep saying, over and over again, denial is not just a river in Egypt, right? And so
Every one of us has one.
every one of us has one, right? Denial is ubiquitous throughout humanity. And I'm making a big statement here that I believe it is the problem, the main problem in humanity is that we all have denial. We go into denial, and we don't recognize it because it's an unconscious process. And so, how do you recognize something that's going on unconsciously? It's sort of like the only way to really recognize something that's going on unconsciously is to see that you have symptoms. The symptom will show up, and then you have to trace it down to what is the cause of the symptom. So it's sort of like if you see footprints, somebody has been there. You don't see the person or the animal, but you understand that someone or something or some animal has been there.
And based on the footprint, you can make an assumption of who and what was been there.
Right. This footprint gives you a clue.
Yes.
Right. And so when somebody comes into therapy, I know that they're struggling with denial because it's ubiquitous. It's part of us as human beings. It's part of denial is also a survival mechanism. So, for example, one of my clients suffered severe physical abuse when she was little. Her father would go into rages and would really beat her. And the mother the mother didn't stop the father. And then after the father stopped the rage and she was beaten, the mother and father pretended like nothing happened. And of course, if she cried, it's the old saying, cry and I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
If that's not denial, I don't know what is, right?
Yeah.
You're crying because you're hurting, but the other person doesn't want to hear your tears. Why does the other person say that? Cry and I'll give you something to cry about. The reason is because the other person is in denial about their own pain. And so when the person is crying, it's touching that part of them that needs to cry, and they're trying like heck to hold those feelings in. So they try to stop it in the person who's crying. So denial is having a problem and saying to yourself, "I don't want to face it." Now, and this is a subconscious thing. It isn't you're actually saying that to yourself, but your subconscious is saying, "I don't want to face it. It's better if I don't face it, and if I face it, it's going to be worse."
Right.
So this particular woman who was beaten grew up, and she's probably the brightest person I've ever met. She became an attorney. She was a private pilot. She learned how to use bullwhips and take out the flame from a candle from 30 feet. I mean, she's incredibly bright, and yet she was destitute, and she was just about to be evicted from her apartment because she had all of these physical illnesses and lost everything that she had. And that's because internally she was using the denial that she used as a little child to escape from the trauma of the beatings and the trauma, and also because both her parents exhibited denial to her. What are you talking about? You weren't beaten. He slapped you. That was it.
Yes.
You know,
Right. Oh boy.
it was no big deal.
Yeah, we have heard that so many times. I didn't say it like that. I definitely didn't mean it like that. When did I do that? You're kind of exaggerating in your description. So, we see that every day in our work.
Yes, yeah. And so denial is ubiquitous. Ubiquitous meaning it affects everybody. And so, I went through a divorce. The divorce was painful, and I started to seek refuge in food. And so I was aware that I was eating too much. I saw my stomach getting bigger, and I thought, it's no big deal. I'll get rid of it at some point. and I got very, very overweight. And I'd never been overweight in my life before. But it was because I hadn't faced the feelings. Even though I thought I was facing the feelings, I was dealing with some of the feelings. But it was also very, very hard for me to really face a lot of the feelings that the divorce brought up from me from earlier in my life.
Yes.
There was a lot of stuff that was there that I didn't that I was trying to not face, and so I became very overweight. That's an example of denial.
Right.
And finally, when I started to come out of denial, I was like shocked to see how much I weighed, even though even though intellectually I saw my stomach getting bigger. I knew I was putting on weight, but I kept saying it's not that big a deal. I'll get rid of it.
Yes.
That's an example of denial.
Yeah, you use your denial as a way of healing,
Right.
The emotional pain.
Right. So all addictions are denial personified. All addictions are powerful, powerful methods of denial. So I smoke the marijuana cigarette and I can just float and I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about the fact that my daughter hates me. I don't have to worry about the fact that my son just lost his job. I don't have to worry about the fact that I may be evicted. I don't have to worry about anything because I just took a puff of my marijuana cigarette and everything is fine.
Everything is fine, yeah.
Right. So that's chemical, right? But chemicals change in our brain through process addictions. So if I'm a compulsive gambler, then I go to Vegas or I go someplace else. Now we can pretty much gamble almost anywhere, and I can play the horses, or I could find some other method of gambling. And while I'm waiting for that horse to come in, my adrenaline is going, my norepinephrine is rising, and I don't have to face anything because I'm just excited and I'm feeling really good. The same thing is true with codependency. All I need is that person to smile at me.
Well, because codependency, is an addiction.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, what do I get if that person smiles at me? I get the belief that I'm okay and nothing is wrong with me and everything is going to be fine. I get the same feeling that I got when I was little and my parents smiled at me. I felt like I was safe. I felt like everything was great.
Right.
So, and then we look to our partners to do that for us. We look to our partners to make us feel good. Well, if we want our partners to make us feel good, we're not stupid. So we then have to try to make our partners feel good. And so we will do things and say things in order to get our partners to smile at us, or to smile at us metaphorically.
Right.
And then if they do, then we feel good. And if they don't, then we're upset with them for not giving us what we think we deserve.
Right. And then that's the need for approval.
That's the need for approval.
Right.
Right.
That is one form of it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd like to switch a little bit right now. We've got a few minutes left, and I want to talk about this starting today. I'm going to talk about it a little more next week, about what can you do if you've identified that you're codependent, or if you've identified that you have an addiction and you've been in denial and now you're beginning to see that you have an addiction. How can you begin to work on it? So I said the first thing we need to do is recognize that we've been in denial and not to beat ourselves up for it, because denial is ubiquitous throughout humanity. And so as we come out of it, our awareness starts deepening. We start to see things and we go, oh, now I can recognize what I've been doing. So now what's the next step? The next step is to get support in your recovery. And you can get support. Certainly there's thousands of books written on codependency, written on all kinds of addictions, but there's nothing like a human being to support you. So we, of course, are therapists. We believe very much in therapy, and we think that that's a wonderful way of getting support. We would say that the therapist needs to be a very, very an empathetic person, and also trained in understanding trauma and trained in understanding addictions. But let's say if you don't want to go to therapy, what's an alternative? And I think the 12 steps are a great alternative. I worked at a 12-step recovery organization for 24 years. I did supervision with the staff and I did groups, and I learned a lot about the 12 steps and about recovery. And I believe that this is something that can be very, very helpful because the 12 steps give you a place. And of course, now because of COVID, they've been doing online groups, but COVID is starting to ease up, and it's much better to be in person.
In person, yes.
Yeah. And so what you do is you go to groups, and in the group, what do you get? You get exposed to spiritual principles. And so at the beginning, they read spiritual principles. What are those spiritual principles? I will talk about those next time because there's 12 spiritual principles. They're called as 12 steps.
12 steps.
Right.
The famous 12 steps.
Famous 12 steps. And so that's so you hear the spiritual principles, and you're around other people who are suffering with the same thing you're suffering with, so you don't feel so alone.
And also, they also bring their own experiences so that you can see that how people from where they are, they can end up in the mutual point that they are in the group sitting together.
Exactly.
You know.
And so what they do then is, and there's different kinds of meetings. Some of them are speaker meetings where a speaker who has a lot of recovery time will get up and speak for a period of time, 45 minutes or an hour. A lot of them are just where you raise your hand and you will get up and then you will speak about what's going on in your life. And the beautiful part about it is you don't get any feedback, so there's no criticism and there's no suggestion that maybe you're doing it wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because the people there are not trained therapists. They don't know how to give feedback correctly, but they do know how to keep their mouths shut. So you'll get up and you'll speak. And just by speaking and having other people unconditionally accept you for what you're saying is
Right.
so healing. It's so
Yes.
powerful.
And another thing that I like to add here, I've been to this, as part of my training, I did attend several 12-step classes.
Mhm.
And one thing that was really important for me to learn, and I learned that we think that, for example, codependency or denial, only belongs to certain group of people.
Mhm.
Where in fact, when I was part of those groups, I saw people of all walks of life.
Yes. Good point.
Yeah, I saw physicians, I saw attorneys,
Mhm.
I saw CEOs, I saw, homeless people, I saw, housewives, I saw, leaders, I saw just about any profession, any background,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So it's when we say it's a ubiquitous kind of a, experience, that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
So it doesn't just belongs to one or two groups, it belongs to everybody.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we just got notified. We're at the end of our program. I want to invite everybody to call us and ask you questions, share your experience. You can share a pseudonym, a name you make up, or you could give us your real name, or you can just start talking. We're interested to hear from you. Next week, join us at 3 o'clock for another episode of Human Sexuality and Relationships with Dr. Rashidian and myself. And at 4 o'clock, we will continue our talk about addictions, codependency, trauma, and relationships. And we invite you to join us once again.
951-922-3532.
And remember, all you need is love.
Love.
Okay.
Until next week.
Until next week.
Be
Bye-bye.
safe, be well.
Bye-bye.